Hey everyone, welcome back to the lab. In this post, we're going to be talking about why I'm starting a podcast as a software engineer. So the announcement is that I'm starting a podcast, the HAMY Labs Pod. And in this post, I'll explain what it's about, why I'm making it, and how you can listen. And so if you want to listen now, you can find HAMY Labs Pod. Should be available on most streaming services, or at least that's the idea anyway. So, let me know if that's not true, and I'll go and try and fix it. All right, so what is the podcast about? So I typically write posts about simple scalable systems for software, creation cycles, and indie hackers. And these are things that I think a lot about in my own career as a software engineer and my personal hobby of building projects on the side. I then turn these posts into videos and publish them on my YouTube channel, HAMY Labs. And so HAMY Labs Pod itself will be an audio-only form of these videos. Now, the caveat is that this means that not all videos will end up on the podcast because, some videos do require visual elements to be useful, especially those that have like me live coding or me showing you a system design or me doing like a walkthrough of a product. Those don't really work so well in audio-only form. But I think a good portion of them will be, especially those like this one that are mostly just reading off my blog posts and talking about them. And so I'd guesstimate about like 75% of these posts and stuff will end up on the pod. And for an idea of the kinds of episodes the podcast will have, you can scroll through my HAMY Labs podcast playlist on YouTube, where I've specifically pulled out some of the ones that don't have this like large visual element, so you can get an idea of that. I will be backfilling some of my podcast episodes as well, so those should be out in the next few weeks. All right, why am I making this podcast? So podcasting is pretty saturated these days, so it's unlikely that this will go well financially for me, but I still think it's a pretty good idea for a few reasons. And the first reason is that I like sharing ideas. Sharing helps me explore, refine, and test my ideas, which generally results in better ideas overall. And I kind of like the saying that's like, writing is how you know what you think. And I think a lot of times until you get an idea out and try and express it, you don't actually know the nuances and intricacies of your idea. And so this is a process, that for me helps do that a little bit better. And so pod or not, I will still be compiling and publishing these shares long term, definitely writing on the blog, probably making these videos. And so podcasting is literally just, another form of that. The second reason is that there's really low extra work on my side. I'm already writing these posts and I'm converting them into vodcasts for YouTube. And the amount of work required to turn these vodcasts into podcasts is pretty negligible. Like currently I'm literally just uploading the video itself and then I'm letting my podcast service turn that into an audio only format. And so there's really almost no extra work involved. And so from my side, there's very little downside. And this is very important due to my very low shares revenue. I calculated that, per post, I was making about $1.50 per hour, which is pretty low. And so I really need to make sure that the, extra cost stays very low, or else I'm making even less than that, which is not very financially rewarding. And finally is the potential for increased audience. So most of my personal content consumption, like how I listen to and consume episodes of stuff, comes in the form of blog posts and podcasts. I read a lot, and then when I'm on a long drive or if I'm at the gym, I listen to podcasts. And so it's interesting that I've personally been publishing my vodcasts in a form that I really rarely consume. I watch some YouTube videos, but usually those YouTube videos are less vodcasty and more visual. And so repackaging this stuff as a podcast allows me to reach more people who consume like I do and potentially bump my numbers. Now, my guess is that the podcast will not lead to significant audience or revenue increases based on the historical stats of my vodcasts on YouTube, but I still think it's worthwhile because I enjoy it, it's useful, and at least a few people seem to like the content. This passes my 3 side project validations, so it's probably worth a shot. Where can you find the podcast? So HAMY Labs Pod should be available anywhere you listen to podcasts. If it's not, please let me know and I'll try to fix that. It's likely that I've set something up wrong. I've never done a podcast before, never had to deal with RSS feeds and distribution and stuff, so I'm sure I'm missing something somewhere. And if you aren't into podcasts and prefer other media instead, you can find most of these episodes in different forms. So text here on my website, hamy.xyz, on video form for HAMY Labs YouTube channel, and then of course for audio wherever you find your podcasts. Next. So overall, I'm pretty stoked to have a podcast. It's something that I've thought about for a while, but also always seemed like a pretty big lift. I've been listening to podcasts for a long, long time, but jumping into it and just like recording stuff, always feels like there's a lot of effort involved setting up your systems. You got to write scripts, you got to like figure out the formats, you got to figure out publishing and everything like that. But like today where I am kind of this year, the lift is pretty small because I've basically been doing this thing just without like actually having the podcast. Like I've been making these YouTubes for I think 4 years now. I've had the vodcast format for like about 2 years now. And so I've basically been doing it in everything except for name. And so it's cool to see how this consistent outputs kind of stack up and make the, next jump, something that seems far away, pretty easy. And so that's where we are now with the HAMY Labs pod. Now let me know in the comments what topics or content you'd like to see from me. This gives me a lot of ideas for what to make next. And if you like this post, please like, share, and sub. It really does help me out because the algorithms love that stuff. And you might also like one of these posts. Why I write online as a software engineer, unlocking understanding, memory, and progress, my 4 side project income sources, a breakdown, and this goes a lot into my shares, both on the blog and my YouTube, the income that comes from it, kind of the ROIs on this and stuff if you want to look behind the curtain. And finally, my career as a software engineer so far to get kind of an overview of my career, my experience, and where I'm coming from and making all these videos. So that's it for this post. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.